Are there men who can write great female characters? Let's find out. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today a mini roundup of 5 authors who actually write excellent female characters. Or better, I know the thumbnail says 5 authors, but we all know I can't count, so there are actually 6 authors because I also have an honorable mention. So what do I mean by great female characters? So things I was looking for, of course, are female agency. How are those women described? But also, is there a good variety when it comes to age range, but also station in life? So things like their socioeconomic background. So I'd like some variety there. And also, a variety in, let's say, blueprints on how women might lead a successful and fulfilled life. So those are all things I was looking for, and also the world building in general, of course. As I say, 6 authors. They're not ranked in any particular way. I think they all do an excellent job when it comes to writing female characters. They're all authors that I discovered during this first year that I'm on BookTube, or just before or around the time when I started this channel. They're all contemporary authors, so I'm not looking at, let's say, more classical ways of fantasy, but they're, bar one example, they're all still alive and writing, and hopefully writing more wonderful books. One of those authors is a reread. I started to reread this author just around the time when I started my channel. Then another one is a rediscovery, an author I rediscovered through BookTube, actually through viewer recommendations. And the others 4 are, new discoveries that I made while I am on BookTube myself. So let's dive in and start with my first example, my honorable mention. He's very much a new author, so all the other ones are very well established authors, whereas he only published his debut novel in March of this year. And yes, I'm talking, of course, about Philip Chase and his Edan trilogy. This is the second installment, The Prophet of Edan. The first one is The Way of Edan, and the third one will come out in September this year, The Return to Edan. So all 3 books out in 1 year. What's not to love straight away? But I also think that Philip Chase in general is a great character writer. Not a big surprise there either, because if you look at Philip here on BookTube, the thing he's known for is, of course, talking to people. He does in numerous long-form discussion videos these days. But I think his female characters and his characters in general are very well observed. He ticks most of those boxes that I mentioned in the beginning. We have actually quite a good age range in women that are in this trilogy. We have very, very young ones, like the main character's Day Raven's kind of like sweetheart at the beginning. And also females of different walks of ways with different hopes and aspirations. Most of them have great agency, not always like on a grand scale, but even in a, let's say, smaller, perhaps more domestic way. When I'm talking of this very first female, like Day Raven's love interest, the woman he hopes to marry, she's quite happy with living in this little village. She doesn't have great aspirations, but that doesn't mean that she's not a strong woman, and it doesn't mean that she doesn't have any agency. So yeah, his female characters, as I say, are well observed, well realized, And yeah, my two favorites are definitely Sequara, but especially Urd. Urd is a older female, but also very powerful. So yeah, I think that he deserves a place on this list. Just an honorable mention, an honorable mention, because I think he's still, yeah, a very unestablished author, and I hope to see over the next, well, hopefully many decades, how his writing style and his character development will mature and change. And I'm definitely there for, yeah, going along with the ride and reading those books. So that's my first author. The next one is the author that I was rereading. So, inspired by the Library of Alexandria, I thought around the time just before and then when I started this channel that I would like to reread, yeah, some Discworld, and especially the City Watch cycle. I made it 3 books into this and then, yeah, basically abandoned this. But that doesn't say anything about the quality of the female characters. Now, Discworld is much more on the lighter side of fantasy, but I think there is some serious truth under that surface layer. And yeah, Pratchett writes quite great female characters. For the City Watch, one character that stands out is Lady Sybil. And again, we have also, as I say, different socio-economic backgrounds. So Lady Sybil is quite wealthy, but she also is self-aware and aware of this fact, and not afraid to fall in love with a man from a much lower social status. No, so yeah, as I say, there is satire in those books, but they're not uncritical in any means. The same goes for the witches. The witches are probably his best known female characters, especially Granny Weatherwax. She is just delightful. But also the other witches are, yeah, equally well realized. Even the youngest member of this coven, Margaret, she has all those ideas of, yeah, that are more new agey, of being in sync with nature and things like that. And I think thinks perhaps that Granny Weatherwax is getting a bit too old for the job until she sees her in action. Because yeah, Granny getting assertive is a view to behold. So I think that Pratchett definitely also, yeah, deserves a place on this list. The next author I want to talk about is my first booktube discovery. So an author I only picked up because I heard him mentioned here on booktube. And that is John Gwynne, and especially his Bloodsworn trilogy. I haven't read any of the other John Gwynne books, but Bloodsworn has excellent female characters, especially Orca. Orca is one badass mother, but also Elvar, who is also some type of warrior. Both of them, Orca and Elvar, are, yeah, female warriors, but not, as I say, in this just gender flipped way. They're very complex women, especially with Orca. Her being a mother, I think, adds that extra complexity to her character. And yes, they are very well realized. What I also liked, and this goes for all characters in this series so far, is that they all live in a very harsh world, but they're also all faced with, yeah, finding a place for themselves, finding a purpose, but also trying to do so without using violence all the time, because it is quite a brutal world that they're, yeah, negotiating in this trilogy. But I think this combination is really well done, and yeah, hence John Gwynne as one of those authors on my list. how can I have a list with this topic without mentioning Stephen Erikson and the Malazan Book of the Fallen? The Malazan Book of the Fallen is interesting insofar as it has several features that were a bit unusual when those books were written. And one of them is that Erikson and also his colleague Ian C. Esselmont conceptualized this as a world of equal opportunity. Now, a world of equal opportunity does not mean that everything is automatically great for women and that they get automatically what they want. But it definitely levels the playing field. Also, women can be magic users in an equal way as men. Women can hold all types of positions in this world. But the individual female characters, and of those are many in Malazan Book of the Fallen, are really well realized. And one thing in particular, I think, is that, as I say, it doesn't automatically mean that those women have agency, but we have many story arcs and character arcs where we find women in horrific, appalling, abject circumstances, and they're still able to carve out some type of agency for themselves. Now, it might not be the type of agency that we would like to see. Some of this we might actually find horrific and think, what? No. But I think that's the point in some respects. Also, I think what I find really what makes me read on despite all of this is that those women don't back down. They keep going. They don't just crawl in a corner and take it and eventually die or something like that, but they keep going. And I think that's one of the things that I find compelling to read. And one thing as well that Esselmont does better than any other writer I've read, male or female, is that he's excellent at writing female self-doubt. And I find that personally important because in a world where we are told that we have to have it all, we have to have the super career, we have to be super moms, we have to be super wives, and please all of this at the same level. I think self-doubt is almost inevitable. And having an author who portrays this in this excellent fashion is really outstanding. And another thing that got him onto this list is the fact that Erikson carries this through also into other books he has written, like this one here, Rejoice, A Knife to the Heart. Here we have a female sci-fi writer, Samantha, as one of our main POV characters. And there is a lot of, how shall I say, overlap between Rejoice and Malazan, thematically, but also in other areas. But the female characters are equally well realized, equally strong females that have agency or kind of empowerment arcs. Erikson. If I mention Erikson, I of course also have to include Ian C. Esselmont. This is his latest, Forge of the High Mage, from the Paths of Ascendancy series, which is what I know him most of. So the books I've read by Esselmont so far are mostly Paths of Ascendancy books. I haven't read this one yet. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm almost there to read this. And I've read some of the novels of the Malazan Empire. And in both those series, he gives us excellent female characters, again, like Erikson, like Pratchett, like Chase. He ticks all those boxes that I mentioned in the start. So what makes him outstanding, or what's his trademark, so to say, I think is that we have very powerful female magic users in his books. That's, I think, one feature. Some of them actually appear quite meek when we meet them the first time, and very and not very exciting at first, until they unleash their power, especially in Path of Ascendancy. Very, very early on, we're introduced to a female character, and that woman is just, she's a nuclear weapon in female embodiment, because when she unleashes her power, there's nothing left, nothing left. So they're scary women, who don't appear scary at first. So he can be quite subversive with tropes and with his character work. And we also see this with the female warrior type, or warrior trope, where we kind of like have whole battalions of fighting women. And this could be so cheesy, but it isn't, because it gets subverted. And another feature of his writing, and that got him a firm place on this list, is Asselmont doesn't shy away from the physical realities of women fighting. And what I mean by that is that if women are supposed to be able, or supposed to be equal to male fighters, their physique has to be different, and will not necessarily comply anymore with our beauty standards that we seem to impose on females. And he does reflect on this, and he does reflect on this in a non-judgmental way. And that got him definite place on this list. And this brings me up to my last author for this list today. He is my rediscovery through BookTube. I've read 2 books of his very first trilogy and wasn't too impressed, I have to say. I was kind of like, it's not bad, but is this really something I want to read? So more on those lines. Until my viewers recommended to me Book of the Ancestor. Yes, I'm talking about Mark Lawrence here. Book of the Ancestor really convinced me. This is an author who can write excellent female characters. Book of the Ancestor stands out because we have such a huge amount of female characters. This could easily be the trilogy with the most female characters I've ever read myself. At least I couldn't think of another example, but then if you need an example, you can never think of one. But so that's one feature. The other feature is, yeah, we have lots of those arcs of, yeah, women, mostly young women, but not only young women, finding purpose, finding a place in the world, finding their special brand of agency. But in this convent, yeah, we have the novices as a younger group, but then we also have the nuns that are older. So again, we get a good age range of female characters. Also, I like the overall message of the trilogy. This message of we can only succeed if we cooperate. And with this almost all-female cast, yeah, there are catfights. They're not always kind of like sisterly and, oh, we're one big sisterhood and we all love each other. No, they have to learn how to cooperate. But the reward of this is so great in the end. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful message that Book of the Ancestor actually, yeah, transports. I haven't read Book of the Ice yet. It's definitely on my TBR. So I still have to get to that. But I did read his newest, which is this one, The Book That Wouldn't Burn. And like Erikson, he transports those qualities of his writing into his other books. So I'm very, very curious to actually read more of him, and also go back to this very, very first trilogy and see, is some of this already in that first trilogy. Book That Wouldn't Burn, it has a Nona-esque character in it. At least I was reminded of Nona when reading this. And again, as I say, great female representation. Yeah, so that concludes my mini roundup of 6 great authors that write excellent female characters. If you have recommendations for me, authors you think I should pick up, please leave them in the comment section. Your recommendations are always welcome and valued. So yeah, leave them there. And yeah, as always, happy reading and all the best.